Hi, today I'm going to show you how to use a simple stamp and simple dye-based inks to give you a beautiful sepia or monochrome look to your stamped images. This is one of the easiest ways to colour and is simple for anyone to do. So I'm going to move these ones out of the way. I'm going to bring in my press to impress. I find a stamping platform so much easier when doing this. And I've got a piece of white stamping card and I've cut this to roughly 5.5 inches square to give me nice space. I've positioned my stamp in place, and this is one of the 2J stamps. This is the watermill stamp, which has got to be one of my all-time favourites. So I'm going to show you how to get the sepia tone. So I'm using VersaFine in Vintage Sepia as my main colour. Now this is an oil-based ink pad, which means when I add water to it, none of the lines will actually move. So this is perfect for using watercolour techniques or for colouring using a water brush, as I'm going to be doing today. So I've given that a good inking, and I'm just going to press it down, making sure I press everywhere to give me a clean, crisp image. So I've got a beautiful image there of the watermill, but it's just sort of stood in the middle of the card, and it's very sort of brown on white, really. What I'm going to do then is I'm going to bring in one of the iZink dye-based inks. Now, dye-based inks are water-based, which means you can pull them out with water, and they've got a beautiful translucency to them. They're also relatively quick drying, so I'm going to actually put some down on my pad here. So I'm just putting a little bit of ink on the lid, and this is why I love the press. I don't have to move and use any other tools or anything. And I've got one of the small Crafts 2 water brushes. This has just been loaded with water. So what I'm going to do first of all is at the right edge, I'm going to release some water from the water brush to give me a very pale colour. So I'm just mixing about half of that ink to give me a very pale colour. And if you need to, take a piece of scrap paper and just take any excess off first and check your colour. So picking up that colour, I'm going to start from the top, and I'm simply going to wash this all over the stamped image. So I'm not bothering about the lines. I'm trying to stay roughly inside the lines of the stamp, but I'm not trying to follow around any detail or anything. I'm giving it just this light wash in this sort of, it's almost like a reddy brown colour. So we go on there and just make sure I cover everywhere of the stamp. Really, really simple. I'm then going to extend the stamp a little bit by coming out from this line here, painting a line out and just dragging my water brush down so that it softens. And I'm going to do the same at the other side. And this is basically grounding, so it's giving the actual stamped image a place in the landscape. I'm going to put another little bit in there and just blend that out. And from this stronger line here, again, and just blend it out. And there are no rules to this, so I'm not trying to create a certain hills or anything else. I'm just trying to create a misty base. So there I've got the main body of colour put in. So what I want to do now is the highlights. So I want to start using exactly the same ink, but rather than going into this section here that I've added the water to, I'm going directly with my water brush into the ink and picking the ink up. And what I'm going to do is start at the top, and can you see that's darker? So I start at the top and I just pull my water brush down, so I've got it darker at that top. I'm going to go in here along this line where I've got the roof truss, again along the top of the roof, and just pull the colour down. So each time I'm picking up from the pure ink rather than from the watered ink. So again, I'm going to put a darker line in there. I'm going to put darker lines in wherever there is space, wherever there is something like this where you've got the sort of bits that make up the mill house. I'm putting a darker line in just to give a little bit of definition. But this is simple one colour painting using a water brush. So again, under the eaves here, let's make that quite dark, and then just pull our water brush down, which will soften the colour. I would really strongly recommend using a decent water brush on this, one that doesn't flood with water. So again, here on the base, and again here. So anywhere where there is a highlight, or anywhere you think it should be darker, just pick up some ink and put it down. So, and you can again go back, make lines even darker. The more you add, the darker those areas will be. So we're not using other colours, we're not using white or black or any tones in there. We're simply adding layers of colour. So I'm just going to go over the top, anything on the front, and then finally just put a little bit on that wall there, and again a little bit on that wall there. I'm just going to pick up the last of this ink and I'm just going to trace the edge of where I placed the shading, just to darken that. If you can see there how it's just darkening those areas, so the more that you put on, the darker it will get. And there we've got a beautifully shaded and coloured image that takes absolutely no time to do. Now, the last thing we want to do on this, I want to re-crisp these lines, and I want the lines of the stamp to stand out. So I'm going to leave, if you notice I left my stamped image in place and my stamp in place. I'm just going to slide in a piece of blank card, and this time I'm taking VersaFine in black. And I'm going to ink my stamp as normal. So I'm just inking it as I would normally do. And then I'm going to take a stamped image across onto this blank piece of paper. And this is the start of doing one in the monochrome. So the same idea with the monochrome. And for the monochrome, I used a black ink. I used the licorice from the Eyes Ink Die inks. So I'm going to slide that one out and take it off. I'm then going to press the second generation of that blank stamp over the top, and can you see it's just darkened those edges and crisped up that little bit and gives me that little bit of tonal change. And then all I would do is take this out, and I'll bring in the one I did earlier, and simply I've mounted that onto a piece of brown, onto a white card blank. You could add a sentiment, and there's your very simple monochrome or sepia toned image, coloured in no time at all, and again there done in black. Really simple, easy technique that anyone can do, even if you're brand new to stamping. Enjoy.